I remember the first time Maya called me average. We were sitting at that small cafe we always went to, the one with the mismatched chairs and too much floral wallpaper. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I remember her voice, casual, almost affectionate, like it didn't sting. "You're just average, you know," she said, stirring her coffee, eyes on her phone. "Like, you're not bad, but you're not remarkable either." I'd laughed it off, of course. "I guess not all of us can be perfect," I'd said, trying to sound like I wasn't bothered. But I was. I didn't say it then, but I felt the words gnawing at me. I wasn't remarkable. I wasn't anything special. And she had a point. Maya was beautiful, driven, successful in ways I could only dream of. She always talked about her friends who worked at big companies, the ones who had real careers. They wore designer clothes, went on expensive trips. I was just me. Working at a local bookstore, trying to keep my head above water while barely scraping by. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at her friends' Instagram posts, her eyes flickering with envy. She never said it, but I knew what she was thinking. How she could do better. How much more exciting life would be if she were with someone who was more impressive. I wasn't impressive. I thought I was doing okay at first. I thought love was enough. I tried to keep up, tried to be the man she wanted me to be. But it was never enough for her. Every time we were out with her friends, I felt like I was in the way. Like I wasn't meant to be there. They were all so polished, so successful, and I was just there. The guy who listened and nodded and tried to fit in. I could feel the looks they gave me when they thought I wasn't paying attention. The way Maya would subtly compare me to them, like I was the one who wasn't measuring up. One night, I overheard her on the phone with her friend Chloe, talking about me. She didn't know I was listening. "I just don't know, Chloe," she said. "He's sweet, but it's like, he doesn't have any ambition. It's like he's fine just staying in the same place. I want more. I need more." I stood there, frozen. I wasn't even angry at her. I was angry at myself. I had heard her say it to my face before, in different ways, but hearing it like this, knowing it was how she really felt, broke something inside me. I tried to convince myself that it didn't matter. I told myself that love was enough, that we didn't need to be perfect, that what we had was real. But deep down, I knew I wasn't enough for her. I wasn't the kind of man she wanted. And that knowledge was eating me alive. I spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was suffocating. I wasn't good enough for her. I wasn't good enough for anyone. I wasn't anything. I spent weeks in this haze of self-doubt, convinced that I was just some background character in her life. I tried to ignore it, to push it down, but the feeling never went away. I wasn't enough. And I knew that as long as I stayed the way I was, I would never be. I tried to talk to her about it once, in the middle of one of those late-night walks we used to take. I told her how I felt like I was just existing, not really living. That I wasn't the person she thought I could be. She sighed, looking at me like I was overreacting. "You're not a loser, you just need a little push. You're fine the way you are. But maybe you need to try a little harder, you know?" I remember that moment so clearly. Her words were meant to comfort me, but they just stung. A little push? Was that all I was worth to her? A little push? I wasn't a project. I wasn't a sidekick. I was a person. And I couldn't just keep pretending that I was okay with how things were. I wasn't okay. I knew it was time to change. But how? Where did I even begin? I had no idea. I didn't know how to start becoming the man I needed to be. The man who didn't feel like he was always second best. The man who didn't just exist in the background of someone else's perfect life. I couldn't keep living like this. But I didn't know how to change. Not yet. I remember the day Maya broke up with me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even loud. It was quiet, like the calm before a storm you don't even know is coming. She asked me to meet her at the park, and when I saw her sitting on that bench, staring out at the lake, I knew something was wrong. "I need to talk to you," she said, not looking at me. I sat down beside her, my heart already picking up speed. "What's going on?" "I don't know how to say this," she started, still not meeting my eyes. "But I think we should break up." I blinked, certain I hadn't heard her right. "What? Why?" I don't think we're right for each other anymore." I couldn't breathe for a moment, and the words I had been trying to form seemed to get stuck in my throat. "But, Maya, we've been together for 3 years. What's changed?" She finally turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "You know how I feel about ambition," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "And the truth is, you don't have it. You're fine just where you are. But I'm not. I need someone who's going places." I felt a sharp stab in my chest. I wanted to say something, to argue, but the truth of her words settled in like a weight I couldn't shake. I'd never been good enough for her, not in the way she needed. And I knew it. "Maya, please," I said, my voice strained. "I've been trying to work things out. We can." She shook her head, cutting me off. "I'm not asking for you to try harder. I'm asking for more. And you can't give it to me. You won't." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to admit what she was saying was true. But it was. She was right. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stared at her. My throat tightened, and for a second, I couldn't even recognize the person sitting next to me. She had always been my everything, and now she was slipping away, just like that. "I've found someone else," she added, almost casually, as if she were talking about the weather. My heart stopped. "What?" I croaked. Her eyes softened for a second, almost as if she were apologizing. "His name is Luke. He's more successful. He's someone who gets it." The word successful echoed in my head, hollow and empty. It was like a knife twisting inside me. She was already moving on, already found someone else who fit the life she imagined. And I was still here, stuck in my own broken dreams. I couldn't look at her anymore. My eyes burned with a mix of anger and humiliation. "So, that's it, then? You just decided?" She nodded, the finality of it all settling in. "I'm sorry, but yes. I'm done," and I don't want to waste your time or mine anymore." I stood up, my hands balled into fists at my sides. I didn't know whether to yell, to cry, to break something. Everything felt like it was collapsing. The girl I loved, the life I thought I was building, the future I had been trying so hard to make perfect, it was all slipping through my fingers. I wanted to shout at her. To tell her she was wrong. To beg her to stay. But instead, I just stood there, frozen. And then I realized something. Something that hit harder than any of the words she'd said. This wasn't about her. This was about me. I'd spent so long trying to make her happy, trying to make myself fit into a mold that wasn't mine, that I had forgotten who I was. I had spent years telling myself that love was enough. But love wasn't enough if you weren't enough for yourself. She had outgrown me, but I had allowed that to happen. I had allowed myself to become someone I wasn't. As Maya walked away, I stood there watching her go, the cold wind biting at my skin. I felt nothing but a dull ache. But beneath that ache, something else was stirring. Anger. Determination. I wasn't a loser. I had spent far too long convincing myself that I was. But not anymore. This wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew one thing: I was going to show her, and everyone else, exactly what I was capable of. I wasn't going to remain the guy who was always overlooked, the one who didn't measure up. No. That person was gone. From now on, I was going to prove that I was worth something, not just to her, but to myself. And I would make damn sure that she saw it. I would make sure the whole world saw it. And I would never be the same. The first few days after Maya left were a blur. I couldn't remember the last time I felt truly alive. For days, I just sat in my apartment, watching my life crumble and wondering where to begin. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the words she said, the way she looked at me, like I wasn't worth the effort anymore. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something important: I was the only one who could change this. I wasn't going to stay stuck in the past. I couldn't. I'd been giving so much of myself to her, to us, and I had nothing left. It was time for me to take that energy and turn it inward, to build something for me. I started with a side project. I didn't know what it would be at first, but I knew I needed something to focus on. So, I opened my laptop and began researching small businesses, reading about what people had done to get started. It felt overwhelming at first, like I was drowning in information, but I pushed through. Okay, one step at a time, I told myself. It was slow. I felt like I was crawling, but I was crawling forward. I picked up a few books on success and productivity. The Lean Startup was the first one I tackled. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I hadn't realized just how much I was holding myself back by thinking I needed everything to be perfect before I started. Just start, I read. Fail fast, learn faster. I took a deep breath. I was starting. That was enough. I made a plan. I didn't know where it was going yet, but I mapped out ideas for a business. It was simple: a local consulting service for small businesses trying to improve their online presence. I didn't know much about business, but I knew enough to help people get started in a world that was constantly shifting. And I had a passion for it. As the weeks went by, I slowly began to gain more confidence. I attended networking events, met new people. I joined a few online communities and started talking to entrepreneurs who were further along in their journey. Slowly, I began to feel the weight of my past lifting. I wasn't just a guy who got dumped anymore. I was someone who was doing something, who was learning, growing, and moving forward. One of the people I met was Adam, a local business owner who had built his company from the ground up. I had connected with him over LinkedIn, and after a few messages back and forth, he agreed to meet me for coffee. I walked into the cafe feeling like a kid about to meet a celebrity. Adam was the kind of guy I used to think was out of my league. He was everything I wanted to be: successful, confident, and driven. "Nice to meet you, man," Adam said, shaking my hand. "You've got the right mindset." "I can see that." "I'm trying to get there," I said. "I've got a lot to learn." We spent the next hour talking about everything, from business strategies to the mindset required to succeed. Adam shared his own story of failure and how he'd learned from it, and I couldn't help but feel inspired. He didn't see me as a loser, he saw me as someone who was trying, and that was enough. "You're not going to figure it all out overnight," Adam said, leaning back in his chair. "But if you keep pushing, you'll get there. It's all about persistence." I nodded. "I can do that. I want to do that." "That's the spirit," he said with a grin. "Keep me posted on your progress, all right?" I left that coffee meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. Adam had given me something valuable, the belief that I wasn't alone in this struggle. I wasn't the first person to start from nothing, and I wouldn't be the last. I had to keep going, keep learning, and trust that the hard work would eventually pay off. The days turned into weeks, and I continued to pour myself into my project. I started building a website, researching potential clients, and creating a business plan. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. Every step I took was a step further away from the person I had been, the person who let fear and doubt control his life. And then, one day, I got an email. It was from a small local business I had reached out to about offering my consulting services. They wanted to meet. They were interested in hiring me. I could hardly believe it. I sat there for a minute, staring at the screen, feeling a mix of disbelief and excitement. My first real opportunity. My first big break. I didn't waste time. I set up a meeting with the owner, walked in with my head held high, and gave them my pitch. I spoke with confidence, even though I was nervous inside. By the end of the meeting, they signed a contract. I had landed my first client. It wasn't just about the money. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, that I could take control of my life and turn things around. I sat back in my chair, staring at the signed contract in my hands, and for the first time in a long while, I felt proud of myself. This was only the beginning. But it was a start. And that was all I needed. I never expected to hear from her again. Months had passed since Maya walked away, months of pain, growth, and countless moments where I felt like I was finally starting to rebuild myself. I had buried my past with her, tucked it into a box I'd kept hidden under all the work, all the changes I was making in my life. I wasn't the same person anymore, and I didn't need her approval to prove it. But then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. "Can we talk?" I didn't hesitate, but I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. I had made peace with what happened, with how she left, and with the way she'd made me feel small. Still, I replied, keeping it neutral. "Sure, what's up?" The message that followed felt like a punch, but not in the way I expected. "I owe you an apology. I know I hurt you, and I regret how things ended between us. I treated you badly, and I was selfish. I'd like to make it right if I can." I stared at the screen, the words settling into my mind. Apology. Regret. It wasn't the words I wanted to hear from her, but they were still words. And there was something oddly relieving about hearing them, even if they came too late. But then she hit me with the second part. Also, I have an opening at my company. A position I think you'd be great for. You can work under me. It's a great opportunity, and I'd like to help you. That stopped me cold. I set the phone down for a moment, trying to process the flood of emotions that hit me. For a second, I felt that old pull. That old desperation to make things right with her, to show her that I could be someone she could be proud of. But then something shifted in me. It wasn't the same old me anymore. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I picked the phone back up, typing carefully, letting the words come slowly, deliberately. I appreciate the offer, but I'm doing much better on my own. I paused, fingers hovering over the keys. For the first time, I realized what was happening here. Maya wasn't reaching out because she cared about me. She wasn't offering help because she believed in me. She was offering it because she needed to feel better about herself. She needed to assuage her own guilt for how she'd treated me. She needed to feel like she could fix things, like she could be the hero, like she could help me climb out of the hole she thought I was still in. I wasn't her project anymore. I wasn't her second choice. I wasn't the person she used to keep around to make herself feel better. I've moved on, Maya. I've built something for myself. I don't need your help anymore. I hit send. There was a long pause before her reply came through. Wow. I didn't expect that. I thought you'd want to work with me again, to fix things. I'm sorry. Her words felt empty. I could almost hear her shock, the disbelief that I didn't fall back into the same old pattern. I didn't need her validation anymore. It's not about fixing things. It's about moving on. I'm not the same person I was when we were together. I'm doing things for me now, Maya. And I'm fine without you. I sat back in my chair, the weight lifting off my shoulders as I stared at the screen. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just calm. Detached. I had built my own life, my own identity, and it didn't rely on Maya. It didn't rely on anyone but me. For the first time, I felt true pride. I wasn't the same guy she had left behind. I wasn't the self-doubting, insecure man who would have jumped at the chance to work with her out of desperation. I wasn't the guy who would have begged for her forgiveness. I was someone who had learned his worth, someone who had fought through pain and emerged stronger. Her response came moments later. I didn't realize. I'm sorry again. I hope you find what you're looking for. But I wasn't looking for anything from her. I had already found it. I set the phone down, leaning back in my chair, a small smile tugging at the corner of my lips. I wasn't angry at her. I didn't need to be. What mattered was that I had reclaimed my power. I had taken control of my life, and it felt good. More than good, it felt like I had finally become the person I always should have been. I wasn't the loser anymore. And Maya? She was just a chapter in my past. A chapter one was ready to close for good. I didn't expect to hear much about Maya after the last conversation. To be honest, I didn't even want to. But you can't fully escape the past, no matter how hard you try. Social media, mutual friends, those little pieces of someone's life that they share with the world, always seem to find their way back to you. It started subtly. I saw one of Maya's posts pop up on my feed, a picture of her at some trendy cafe, smiling with her arm draped around her new boyfriend, Luke. He looked perfect for her, handsome, dressed in the latest fashion, and smiling like he had the world at his feet. They looked happy, perfectly happy, just like she wanted everyone to believe. I felt a sting in my chest, but I quickly shook it off. She had made her choice, and I had moved on. Still, the little flicker of doubt crept up. I told myself not to care. Then, it happened again. A few weeks later, I saw another post. This time, she was holding a glass of wine, her eyes sparkling in a photo, captioned, "Living the Dream." #blessed #perfect life. It was as if she was trying to convince herself, and everyone else, that everything was flawless. But something in her eyes didn't match the words. I could see it, even through the photo. There was something missing. Something wasn't right. I didn't overanalyze it, but the cracks were beginning to show. The longer I watched, the more I noticed posts about being the best version of yourself and chasing dreams, but no real substance behind it. There were subtle hints that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Her job, the one she had once bragged about with so much enthusiasm, no longer seemed to bring her the same joy. One day, I overheard a conversation at a cafe between Maya and one of her friends. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the mention of her name caught my attention. "She's really not happy at work, you know," her friend said. "She's been talking about quitting for weeks now." I frowned. I hadn't heard her talk about that before. It seemed strange, given how much she used to boast about her job. She had acted like it was everything, the thing that defined her. Another time, I saw a text exchange from Maya to one of her friends in a group chat. She was venting about Luke. "I don't know, something's off. He's emotionally distant. I feel like I'm the only one trying. I didn't want to know this. I shouldn't have cared." But it was hard not to feel a small, twisted satisfaction. I had been where she was, pouring my heart into something that wasn't returned, left feeling invisible. And now, I was watching it happen to her. Karma had a funny way of working, didn't it? Meanwhile, everything in my life was going in the right direction. My business was taking off. Clients were signing on, and my brand was slowly gaining recognition. I was building something real, something that was mine. It wasn't easy. It was a daily grind. But it was paying off. I could feel myself changing, growing stronger with each new challenge. I wasn't the person Maya had left behind anymore. My confidence had shifted. It wasn't just about proving her wrong, it was about proving to myself that I was capable. Then, one day, Maya reached out. "Can we talk?" the text read. "I need your advice." I hadn't heard from her in months. The tone was different this time, desperate in a way that made me pause. I let it sit for a while before responding, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "What's going on?" I typed. "I don't know what to do. My job is draining me. Luke and I, well, things aren't great between us. I just feel stuck." There it was. The cracks, the truth spilling out, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. She was struggling, and part of me felt an old tug, a desire to help, to be the person who would rescue her. But I wasn't that person anymore. "You made your choices," I wrote. "You've built this life, and now you have to face the consequences of those choices. I can't fix it for you." Her reply came quickly. "I didn't ask you to fix it. I just need someone to talk to. You've been through this. You've changed." I took a moment to breathe. I could feel the pull again, the temptation to offer comfort, to slip back into the old pattern. But no. I wasn't that guy anymore. "You're right," I said. "I've changed. And honestly, it's not about fixing anything. It's about realizing that everything happens for a reason. She didn't respond right away, and when she did, her words were short. I didn't realize how much you've changed. I thought we'd always be the same. I didn't feel pity for her. I felt something else, something lighter. The person who once begged for her approval was gone. I had become someone new, someone who didn't need her validation anymore. I'm not the same person you knew, I typed. And I don't want to be. I set my phone down, feeling a sense of satisfaction I hadn't expected. It wasn't about pride, it was about freedom. Maya had underestimated me, but more than that, I had underestimated myself. I wasn't going back. And I didn't need her to realize that, because I already knew who I was now. The chapter ended with me standing taller, feeling for the first time the full weight of my own power. Maya had been a part of my past, but that was where she belonged, in the past. I was finally moving forward, free from her shadow. It didn't take long for things to unravel for Maya. I had heard the rumors, how her company was restructuring, how the layoffs were coming, and how, despite her best efforts to present a perfect image, she was always walking a tightrope. But I didn't expect it to happen so fast. One morning, I opened my email to find an unexpected message. It was a formal offer from a major company, offering me a larger contract than I'd ever imagined. My heart raced as I read through the details. This was it. This was the break I'd been working toward for months, maybe even years. This contract had the potential to launch my career into a whole new direction. It was the kind of opportunity I'd always dreamed of, an opportunity one had earned, not given. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the offer. It was a strange feeling. I didn't feel elated, not in the way I thought I would. It wasn't just about the money or the status, it was about the fact that I had fought for this, and now it was mine. I had worked tirelessly to get to this point. I had spent countless nights awake, reading, planning, building something from the ground up. And now, all of that hard work was paying off. But there was no time to bask in the glory. I had to respond quickly, so I did. I signed the contract and set everything in motion. Later that week, as I was reviewing some details for the new project, I received a message from Maya. It came through with a notification that made me pause. "Hey, can we talk?" the message read. My first instinct was to ignore it. I had nothing left to say to her. But then I saw the urgency in her words, the desperation. "I really need your advice," she continued. "Things have gotten really bad at work. I don't know what to do." I set my phone down for a moment, letting out a quiet sigh. Her life was falling apart. I knew it before I even read the rest of the message. Her perfect life was starting to crumble, piece by piece. I had watched it from the sidelines for months, but now the cracks were impossible to ignore. She was struggling, and for the first time, I felt nothing. I thought about it for a few seconds, then decided to respond. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not sure how I can help. You made your choices. Now you're dealing with the consequences." There was no anger in my words, no gloating, just a simple truth. I could have offered to help her, maybe given her a few connections or offered advice on how to bounce back. But I didn't feel that pull anymore. I had been that person before, the one who wanted to fix things for her, the one who was constantly looking for ways to make her happy. But I was different now. I was done trying to save someone who never valued me. Her reply came quickly. "What do you mean? You always helped me before." I could feel the frustration in her words. She thought that just because we had been together, just because she had once been a part of my life, that I owed her something. That I should step in and make everything okay for her. I almost felt bad for her, but I didn't. Instead, I responded simply. This is what happens when you make choices based on superficiality. You can't build a solid foundation on something that doesn't have substance. The words felt heavy, like they were meant to hit her in a way that would make her think. I knew it wasn't going to change anything for her. She'd probably just chalk it up to me being bitter or angry. But it wasn't that. It was the truth. Maya had built her life around the idea of perfection, the perfect job, the perfect boyfriend, the perfect image. But when the foundation cracked, everything came tumbling down. And now she was facing the consequences. I couldn't save her from that. No one could. Her response came slower this time. I didn't realize. I thought I was doing the right things. There it was. The realization. The acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she had underestimated me. But it was too late now. The damage had been done. The distance between us was too vast to cross, and I had no intention of going back to who I was before. Not for her, not for anyone. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. This wasn't about revenge. It had never been. It was about growth. It was about understanding that I didn't need anyone to validate me or save me. I was my own person now, and I had done the work to get here. I had earned everything I had, and I didn't need anyone to remind me of that. Not Maya, not anyone. The chapter ended with me realizing just how far I had come. And how much further I was going to go. It's strange how quickly things change. 1 minute, Maya's life seemed perfect, her job, her relationship with Luke, her social media posts of glossy vacations and picture-perfect moments. And the next, it all came crashing down. I'd seen the signs from the sidelines, of course, little cracks here and there. But I never expected it to happen so quickly, so decisively. Her company, the one she had once bragged about, started going through a major restructuring. Layoffs were announced, and within weeks, Maya was out. Her once glamorous job, the one she had based so much of her identity on, was gone. Her social media posts stopped being filled with those happy, curated images. They became more desperate, more curated to fit some idea of happiness she could no longer reach. I didn't care enough to check every post, but I'd see them pop up every now and then. The empty smiles, the hashtags she used to flood her captions with, now felt hollow. I remember one post in particular, a picture of her sitting alone at a cafe, staring down at her phone with a forced smile, as if trying to convince the world that everything was still fine. But the caption was telling. Some days are harder than others. Still pushing through. I didn't know whether to feel sorry for her. She had built this perfect world around herself, all based on success, appearances, and the validation of others. Now, none of it seemed to matter. Her friends started pulling away, subtly at first, then more obviously. It was like they were all starting to see her for who she really was. The woman who had, for so long, disguised her insecurity with her perfectly curated life. I watched it all from a distance, but I wasn't invested in it anymore. I was focused on myself, my work, my growth. That was the one thing I had learned through all of this. Living well, without revenge or bitterness, was the greatest thing I could do for myself. And then, just when I thought I could move on completely, Maya reached out again. The text came unexpectedly, a few weeks after her job had fallen apart. Can we talk? It said. I really need to apologize. This time, I didn't hesitate to respond. It was strange how little it affected me. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't feel the need to lash out. My response was calm, almost indifferent. Sure, what's going on? She replied quickly, her words rushed, like she was desperate for validation. I've messed up. I know I treated you horribly, and I've lost everything because of it. I thought I had it all figured out, but now I see it was all an illusion. I'm so sorry. I read her message, and I felt something, regret, maybe. But not for her. For me, maybe, for the person I used to be. For the way I used to care so much about what she thought. The person who would have dropped everything just to make her feel better, just to fix the pieces of her life she had broken. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I didn't respond right away. I just let her words sit there. I could hear the real regret in them, the desperation in her voice even through the text. But I wasn't going to make this about me. It wasn't about me anymore. A few hours later, she sent another message. I thought you'd always be stuck, you know? I thought I'd always have the upper hand. But now I see. I see how far apart we've drifted. Her words hung in the air. They were soft, almost mournful. But they didn't shake me. I didn't feel any desire to be that person again, the one who needed her approval. I had already moved on from that version of myself, and I wasn't going back. I took a deep breath and typed my response, the one I had been thinking about all day. Maya, you're right. We've drifted. And honestly, I'm glad we have. I'm not stuck anymore. I'm not that person. And I don't need to fix things with you. I let those words sink in before I added the final line, the one I knew would change everything for her. You don't need to apologize. You just need to accept that everything happens for a reason. I've moved on, and I'm better for it. There was a long pause before her reply came through. I could almost hear her frustration through the text. So, that's it? You're just going to let me go like this? But I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. I had let her go a long time ago. Yeah, I wrote. That's it. I'm sorry, but this is where we part ways. I hope you find what you're looking for. Her reply was short. I understand. I truly do. Goodbye. And with that, she was gone. Again. I leaned back in my chair, a strange sense of calm filling me. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning. It was about me. About finding myself, standing on my own feet, and finally seeing that the life I was living was the one I had built for myself. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had everything I needed. It's funny how life works out. Maya's life, once so meticulously crafted, had begun to unravel completely. I watched it happen from the sidelines, but I wasn't invested anymore. Not in the way I used to be. Her perfect world was falling apart, and for the first time, I felt nothing. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel any sense of vindication. I had spent so long focusing on her and her opinions of me, and now that I was free from that, I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. Her regret, her struggles, were hers to bear. My life, on the other hand, was finally where I had always wanted it to be. My business had grown exponentially, and I was beginning to take the reins in ways I hadn't imagined possible a year ago. I had been consistent, and my hard work was paying off. The clients I'd once dreamed of working with were now reaching out to me, and each contract I signed made me feel more and more like the person I had always known I could become. But it wasn't just about the success. It wasn't just about the numbers or the praise. It was about how I felt about myself. How I had found the courage to stand on my own 2 feet, without anyone's approval, without Maya's validation, and say, I did this. I am enough. I woke up one morning and looked at myself in the mirror, really looked at myself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see the insecure guy who had been afraid of not measuring up. I didn't see the guy who had bent over backward to please someone else. I saw someone who had earned his place. Someone who had fought through the hard days, the self-doubt, the loneliness, and had emerged stronger. The person staring back at me was someone who had made it, on his own terms. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Maya. I had no idea what she could possibly want now. I hadn't heard from her in months, and honestly, I didn't want to. I opened the message and saw a simple, apologetic text. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I realize now how wrong I was. I should have appreciated you more. I hope you're doing well. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. I could feel the weight of her words, but I didn't feel anything like I thought I would. A part of me expected to feel a rush of satisfaction, but I didn't. Instead, I felt calm. I felt at peace. I realized that her apology didn't matter anymore. It wasn't about me needing her validation or her forgiveness. It was about me recognizing that I didn't need anything from her at all. I thought about how she used to define my worth, how her approval was something I craved like air. But now I knew the truth. My worth had never been tied to her, or to anyone else. It was mine. I had always had it. I replied simply, "Thank you for your message. I'm doing great. I've moved on. I hope you find what you're looking for." It wasn't a harsh reply. It wasn't angry. It was just final. It was the closure I hadn't known I needed. It wasn't about proving anything to her anymore. It was about the quiet, peaceful confidence that came from knowing who I was and where I was going. I set my phone down and looked around my apartment. The space that had once felt empty and lonely now felt like my own sanctuary. I had worked for everything I had, and it wasn't just about the material things, it was about how far I'd come. It was about the fact that I had learned to rely on myself, to trust my instincts, and to believe in my own value. I'd gone through the pain. I'd been broken, humbled, and rejected. But I had built something stronger in its place. Maya's regret was hers to deal with, not mine. I had no desire to fix her, or to fix anything about our past. What mattered was what I had built for myself. What mattered was that I had chosen to grow. The doorbell rang, and I was snapped from my thoughts. I stood up and walked over, feeling a lightness in my chest that I hadn't known was possible. When I opened the door, it was one of my clients, someone who had been following my work for months. They'd come to discuss a new, bigger project. Another win. Another step forward. As we sat down to discuss the details, I realized how far I had come. From the guy who had been so afraid of failure, so consumed with what Maya thought of me, to the man who was now sitting confidently at the table, in control of his own life, his own future. It was no longer about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was always enough. And that, right there, was the real victory.